Toyota. You may think twice before you even knowing that it was just basically a versatile and friendly brand. Well, here's the deal. Toyota has made a legendary icon known for overlanding and conquering land driving. This is everything about the story about the legendary Land Cruiser. Starting off with the first Land Cruiser in 1951 called the BJ. The BJ-20 was the very first Land Cruiser used by American soldiers during the Korean War in 1951. And let me tell you this, the Land Cruiser wasn't just a station wagon back then. It was actually inspired by the US military jeep called the Willys MB. Made in 1940, the Land Cruiser came out in 1951 as the BJ-20. It wasn't long until 1960 the Philippines first received their very own Toyota Land Cruiser, which is called the Model 40. If you don't know why do people sometimes say FJ in old Land Cruisers? Well, here's the thing. F signifies that the Land Cruiser uses a straight 6 gasoline engine. B is a 4-cylinder diesel. H means the Land Cruiser uses a 6-cylinder diesel engine. And J means, well, a Toyota Land Cruiser. Most people confirm that it could stand for Jeep because the Toyota owner type Jeep was the original Land Cruiser used by Filipinos before the real Land Cruiser showed up. However, Toyota just confirms was the J could actually mean the body style of the Land Cruisers. 1967 released the J55, also known as Iron Pig. So why do people sometimes call the Series 55 Iron Pig? Well, it's basically due to this. If you look at the front of the J55, Iron Pig actually stands for, well, it's a pig made out of metal because the face of the Land Cruiser Series 55 was basically the face of a pig because of the rectangular shaped grille and the round headlights looking almost like a pig's face. Very convincing. That is why they call it Iron Pig. In fact, most Americans call it a Scout due to the fact it was driven in a Stephen King movie called The Mist. Later on in 1980, they would release the Series 60 Land Cruiser. This Land Cruiser was basically optional to compete against the Land Rover ever since. However, since Filipinos rather use Land Cruisers against Land Rovers, well, it's because Asians hate Land Rovers due to the fact they would compete with Toyota for dominance. And the Toyota Land Cruiser was entitled as an overlanding legend because it basically took over the off-road world as we know today. In 1984, then we got the Land Cruiser Series 70. Well, I actually did have a relative who does drive a J70 Land Cruiser, but it was a 3-door. There were actually 2 different trim levels that you can get for Series 70. A pickup truck model, a 5-door SUV, and a 3-door Trooper in likely the case also as a single cab pickup truck, which basically makes 4 variants of the J70. In fact, if you don't think that the J70 ever impresses you, 1989 towards 1990 is definitely my favorite Land Cruiser of all time. In fact, I still have one and I did own one and bought one in 2021, which is called the Model 80 or Land Cruiser Series 80. The Land Cruiser Series 80 was referred as King of the Overlanding Vehicles due to its ruggedness, capability, and off-road prowess. The Land Cruiser Series 80 features some high-tech qualities that all 1980s vehicles had, and guess what? Technology was already set in 1980s and 1990s. The Land Cruiser Series 80 featured ABS, which is basically called anti-lock brake system. So what is ABS exactly? ABS is used to lock up your disc brakes when you are about to come to a stop, but still, when you apply ABS system on the brake, the wheels would slowly spin in a slow motion movement. That could actually mean that you're still pushing the brake, but the ABS still allows you to rotate the wheels in a slow motion without causing sliding or slipping on tough roads when you're driving off road. In fact, the Land Cruiser 80 series also comes with electronic air conditioning and a turbo timer. However, there was a false detail that most 1980s people don't know about. The Land Cruiser Series 80 never actually comes with electronic mirrors. Well, despite the point they do have power mirrors, the only way to adjust the mirrors is you basically have to step outside or open the window and hold the mirror and move it side to side and up and down, because that was the time when power mirrors didn't even exist in the 60s. 1996 towards 1997, we got the Toyota Land Cruiser Colorado VX. The Land Cruiser Colorado was a mid-sized version unlike its larger counterparts. The Land Cruiser Colorado was using a small V6 gasoline engine, and guess what? Daniel Craig in James Bond's No Time to Die actually did drove one. Well, I actually owned one before I got the Land Cruiser Model 80 in 2021. So, if you buy a Land Cruiser Colorado in Dubai, then you would basically notice that 1997 minus 2021 means that the Land Cruiser Colorado is basically 27 years old. That's very young for a SUV that has been in 1990s. 1998 towards 1999 is the Land Cruiser Series 100 and 105. If you guys remember my 100 Series Land Cruiser underrated video, then go to YouTube and check that out for yourself. So starting with the quirks and features of the Land Cruiser Series 100 is, you obviously remember that it does have one of the most untouchable engines that has ever been made. The 1FE Bullet Supercharged V8 gas engine. That engine was used in Australia. In fact, I already mentioned that I did have someone who does drive a 100 series Land Cruiser and the 70 series Land Cruiser. And he is basically on my mother's side, which is kind of cool actually, because that's actually quite accurate for most Land Cruiser enthusiasts that would drive something like this. 2007 towards 2013 is the Land Cruiser Series 200, also known as Land Cruiser 200 series. This was the modern version that we got in the present of 2015. In fact, this Land Cruiser was pretty much a wider version that carried most of its guts from the Land Cruiser Series 80 and the DNA body style design of the Land Cruiser Series 100 from 1998. And from what I can tell, this is the Land Cruiser that everyone bought in the present at that time. So, after the concept of the 200 series Land Cruiser, in 2014 we got the FJ Cruiser. Until 2014, USA flopped the Land Cruiser lineup for the FJ Cruiser in 2014. The 2014 FJ Cruiser went on a hiatus for a long time and was no longer continued ever since. Shortly after this discontinuation of the FJ Cruiser in 2014, 2020 and 2023 released the new Land Cruiser Series 300. It was basically a revamped version of the original 200, but here's the actual concept. The difference between the 200 and the 300 is the 300 basically has a shorter headlight design and a much more bigger grille, along with what it appears to be a black design crossing between the grille and underneath the headlights. Very convincing for a design to actually be distinctive in any Land Cruiser model. Shortly after 2024 and this year of 2025, we now got a new relocated design of the Land Cruiser lineup, the Model 250. The 250 series Land Cruiser was a late version of the original 300 concept. This car is obviously compared with the Ford Bronco, which also got re-updated in 2019. This version looks a bit similar to that of any other car. In fact, the second car that did compete with the Land Cruiser 3 door after would be this. And actually, the car that did compare to this 250 and the new Ford Bronco would definitely be the Hyundai Santa Fe. Yeah, definitely what I call a cool looking design of a vehicle, and this Land Cruiser is overdone, and I really like what Toyota done with it over the past few months. In fact, it wasn't long after in USA, since 1989 towards 1990, they did release a vehicle that would contribute itself to the Land Cruiser Series 80 would be the Toyota 4Runner. However, the Toyota 4Runner basically is a hybrid concept of a 1997 Toyota Hilux, also a Land Cruiser Series 80. Yeah, that's what I call a true concept. So there it is, you guys, the whole timeline of the Toyota Land Cruiser. I hope you guys enjoy watching this video. Make sure that you go comment, like, and sub to the channel, and thank you again for giving me 200 subscribers. Hope you enjoyed this.